The Hornady Lock and Load Auto Progressive Press, or AP for short, is a fully functional 5-station progressive press that gives you one loaded round with each pull of the handle. Today we're going to go through step by step how to set it up, so stay tuned and let's get started. When you get your Hornady Lock and Load, it comes in this nice big box, fully packed from the factory, impervious to shippers' abuse. And what you want to do is slide off the cover, get it out of your way, and start taking out the goodies. Well, there's a lot of packing in here. Take your time, try not to lose anything. Here's the actual press. And it's a beauty. Along with that, we have some other goodies in here. There's our powder measure and priming tools. Here's a powder measure die. Our lock and load bushings there, and a bracket for our bin. There's our ammo bin, and it has a drum for our powder measure inside. Yes, when I'm setting one of these up, I do read the manual. It's absolutely essential. So, now that we got everything out, we can get started. The first thing we have to do is bolt the press to the bench. And to do that, I'm going to have to drill some new holes in this bench. Okay, now that we got the holes drilled, we can go ahead and mount the press up. And for this, Hornady recommends 5/16 inch bolts with a washer on them like I've got here. The length will vary depending on how thick your bench top is. I'm using 4-inch bolts here. They seem to do the trick for me. And we'll get them both in there. Tighten them up as you normally would like any other tool, a vise or something you're tightening down. It doesn't have to be super tight. You just don't want this thing moving around. And there we go. That's plenty tight. This thing is solid as a rock. You can pick the bench up with it, if I could pick the bench up. All right, now we've got to install our handle. Get that on there. So now we want to secure the handle by tightening its lock nut with a crescent wrench. And the basic press is mounted and ready to go. So let's move on to the next step, which is mounting the shell plate. And before we do that, Hornady wants a little bit of grease on the base of the press here. There's little indentations here for the ball detent, so we're going to put a little grease in those, and that'll make the thing ride a lot smoother. You want to take this keyed area right here and make sure it fits the corresponding stud on the press. Nice and easy. At that point, it's just a matter of putting the screw in place. It doesn't have to be super snug, and I lift up on the handle to create a little friction on it. Lift it up. Look there, we've got a ratcheting press. It is working. Hornady sets these up at the factory to ratchet properly. If you find that it is not coming all the way around to each station, you need to consult your manual to find out how to retime it, or call a Hornady tech. They can walk you through it if they have to. So, the next thing we want to do is to put the shell retainer spring, and this is a spring right here. It's a nice coil loop around the shell plate. And it goes in place pretty easily, but you have to cycle the press a couple times to get it to drop in, and there it goes. Now it's running in its groove here, and it'll hold the shells in their stations all the way around at each station. Check and make sure everything's advancing properly. Each time you raise the ram, it should be coming up on each station, on each die station here. There should be a shell holder opposite it. This one is working properly. Hornady sets these up at the factory. And if it's not indexing properly, there are instructions in your manual on how to fix that, or you can call Hornady's tech support and they can walk you through it also. Next, we want to install the priming mechanism. Now this came equipped, ready to go for large primers, and we're loading 45 ACP, but we decided to take it apart so you could watch how it's put together. first thing to do is take the priming ram here and hook it up to this little spring right here, which is hard to reach. Get it out of there. This puts the tension on your priming arm here. And then we place the cover on top that retains it. Now before you install yours, be sure those parts are clean and oil-free, no debris, no rough edges. Just double check it, make sure the primers have a nice easy path to follow. Because on progressives, one of the most important things you can do is make sure that your primers flow properly. Okay. As you see, it moves back and forth there. It gets cammed back. And it goes forward. Lines up here, and you've got a primer in place once there's one to feed. So now that we have that in place, we can screw the primer shield in place. And that's very easy. That just screws on those outer threads down there. Next, we want to put the inner tube in. And there are two of these. So make sure the one you get corresponds to the primers you want to use. See, one's got a large hole and one's got a small hole. We're going to use large primers, so we'll go with this one. There's a slight rebate here, and you want to put that down so it'll go into its recess inside there and nest properly. There we go. Once you have that in place, this little guide goes on top that centers everything up. So now when you go to feed primers from one of these, it centers it up for you, pull the pin, primers fall down, you're fully charged. So that's the priming setup. Everything's running smoothly. So far so good. Next we take our lock and load powder measure. And being careful not to lose any of these levers or anything on the way, we're going to put it into the die. And we're going to take the activation arm, slip it over its locking nut here. Tighten that in place. Make sure it's moving freely. Now this device is called the powder measure stop, excuse me. And what this does is limits the travel of this powder measure. So when your case hits the top of the die and hits that expansion point, all the pressure is going to be borne by this rather than your mechanism and your powder measure. Pretty good idea. It's all taken up here, all the stress, so you don't have to worry. So we'll put this in place over the two spring points, and we'll put our spring first on the top, then on the bottom. Make sure we have good positive return pressure. That way when the case backs out, this comes down, gets another load of powder. You don't want your powder measure to jam up. Now we get to test it. Take a case, put it in station 1, index it over, station 2. There goes our powder measure. Now we're not feeling a lot of resistance at the end, and this isn't bottoming out, so we're going to need a little more adjustment here. I'm going to tweak that up. There's a little bit. Let's try a bullet in there. Just a little more. Just need a little more. There. And let's see what it looks like. There. Bullet stays in the case. It's going to stay oriented for the next seating step. So we'll call that good. Powder measure's ready to go. We can lock down our adjustments and proceed. Now that we've got the powder measure installed, we can install the Hornady powder cop. And what this does is gives you a visual verification of the powder level in the case. It'll show you if the case is properly charged. It'll also show you if there's a double charge in there, which can be disastrous. So this is a great idea when you're loading on a progressive. Now to install it, again, we want to put our lock and load bushing on there. Put it into the press. It'll be on station 3, right next to your powder measure. Take a prime case, run it through 1, Charge it with powder. Comes over. Now the powder cop. And you can see the white O-ring just shows above here. We can adjust this up just slightly so it, with the proper powder charge, and I've weighed this already so I know I'm throwing the proper charge, it comes up about flush. That way, every time you put the handle down, your eyeball will fall on this O-ring and see that it's at the right level. So let's take the same case, leave the powder in it, and run it through and give it a double charge and see what it looks like. There's the second charge. And there, the O-ring comes up twice as far. Now it's not a huge difference, but now there's a gap between the die and the O-ring. So your eye should pick that up instantly. It's right under your nose, it's put there right in front of you on purpose. So when you see that, you know you got a double charge case. Next, we're going to install the bullet seating die. Now I went ahead and installed the sizer die in station 1. That's pretty easy, nothing to figure out there. The seater die takes a little bit of finagling depending on what unit you have. Now we're using the Hornady die here, which crimps and seats the bullet to proper depth in one motion. It's got 2 adjustment rings for the bullet depth and for the crimp. I've got a bushing on it, so we're going to lock and load that in place. And what we'll do is take an empty case and we'll just run it through without powder or without primer. We're just making a dummy test case. I've looked in the Hornady manual here. Our overall length is 1.230, 1 inch 230 thousandths for the 230 grain XTP bullets we're going to load. So we go up to station 1, size it. Normally we would prime right here, charge with powder. Next station is the powder cop. Nothing happening because we have no powder. Station 4, take an XTP bullet and put it in the case. Goes up, seats the bullet, crimps. There it is. Next station, if you wanted to crimp separately, there's still one open station. So if you wanted to add a taper crimp die to that, you could, and just seat with this one. Some people like to do that, especially with cast bullets where you might shave a little lead off them. But this particular unit works fine just as is. So you'd go up to the next station, and then it would eject the shell, and you're done. And from then on, each pull of the handle will give you 1 loaded round. That's what the AP is all about. Okay, with the press all set up and our test rounds looking good, we're ready to start loading ammo. If you have any questions on how to use this or set it up, give us a call on the tech line. We'll be glad to help you out. Thanks for watching. See you next time.